This video series is brought to you by the ASU Writing Center within the Academic Support Network. Thank you for joining me as we discuss part 1 of critical reading and engaging with sources. This video, our first in the series, will discuss evaluating sources. Let's get started. When you begin looking at and evaluating sources, it's important to note that there are two common categories: scholarly and popular. These categories describe a source's content, purpose, audience, appearance, and more. There are some simple questions you can ask to determine whether a source is scholarly or popular. Like, why is the source being used? How is the source being used? Who is the intended audience? What venue was it published in? And what is the author's purpose? It is important to determine whether a source is scholarly or popular for a few reasons. First, some assignments require a certain category of source. Second, understanding the category can help you better understand what the source prioritizes and why. This allows you to think critically about the information presented. Let's look over some common characteristics of scholarly and popular sources. Scholarly sources consist of research that was conducted by experts in a field. They have been evaluated or peer-reviewed by other experts like professors, researchers in the field to confirm the information is accurate and meaningful. Scholarly sources include necessary citations as evidence and a full list of all sources, like a works cited or reference page. They appear in academic journals, edited volumes, and monographs, often available in libraries or online research databases. And finally, scholarly sources utilize information from .gov and trusted non-government organizations like .edu. Popular sources may focus more on the news and current events. They do not always include citations of sources in the text, and they don't always have a works cited or a reference list. They may contain general interest stories, which may refer to research, but do not contain original research. Popular sources are written by and for the general public. They may not be peer-reviewed or evaluated, and they are often in newspapers, magazines, blogs, .com, and .org websites. It is important to note that sometimes the citations and reference lists in popular sources refer back to scholarly sources. This is a typical flow of information. The popular source may summarize or use snippets from the original scholarly work or data in their writing that appeals to a wider audience. For example, NPR articles on public health news often cite JAMA articles, which is scholarly research on medical issues. Along with considering whether a source is scholarly or popular, there are also 3 levels of sources that you will want to consider when doing research. These levels are primary, secondary, and tertiary. A primary source provides raw or original data and information that can be studied by individuals. Examples include poems or novels, historical diaries, objects like maps, blueprints, and artwork, as well as interviews, experiment results, and data sets. A secondary source can be published research, like articles or books, that uses primary data to make an argument. According to Booth et al., researchers read them to keep up with their field and use what they read to frame problems of their own by disputing other researchers' conclusions or questioning their methods. A tertiary source can synthesize and report on secondary sources for general readers. Examples include annotated bibliographies of published sources, encyclopedias, and literature reviews. You should be cautious when reading tertiary sources. Rather than rely on and fully trust the information in the tertiary source, we recommend you go and find the source that was described and cite it rather than the author of the tertiary source. So why does considering these levels matter when you are finding and reviewing sources? There is a flow of information here that's important to understand. It can be useful to know that you can follow this flow of information to find more or other sources. Back to our first example, if you found an NPR article about your research topic, you know that this is a tertiary source and that it may be informed by a secondary source you could look for and read as well. Remember that each type of source has value, but that value depends on your needs and purpose for information. You will want to select the right type of source to suit your needs. High school level writing allows for more frequent use of popular sources, whereas college level writing will ask you to focus on more scholarly sources and to begin to think more intentionally about primary, secondary, and tertiary levels in your sources. Now that we have considered the different kinds and levels of sources, we can go over questions that you should consider as you engage with sources. It is important to consider what it means for a source to be relevant. The definition of a relevant source depends on the appropriateness and importance of a source's information to your research needs. To determine this, you can ask the following questions. What was your initial goal in looking for the source? Did you find what you were looking for? What is the connection to your research topic, purpose, and argument? What is the relevance to your discipline or field? Are the data, cases, examples, and evidence strong and current? Or is the information unspecific, biased, and/or out of date? What kind of information is this source providing you? How does the source help to expand your understanding of the topic? Another important consideration as you engage with sources is to determine if your source is credible. The definition of a credible source can change depending on the discipline, but in general, for academic writing, a credible source is one that is unbiased and is supported with evidence. You can determine credibility of a source by asking the following questions. Is the source peer-reviewed? Peer-reviewed sources are written by an established and credible member of a field and reviewed by other experts before publication. This can include journals and books. When in doubt, ask your faculty or a research librarian. They can help you determine if a source was peer-reviewed. If a source is not peer-reviewed, do you have a good rationale for using this source? For example, is it a popular source like a newspaper or a magazine or an online source? And why are you interested in using that source? You can always discuss with your faculty to get their opinion on if your source is credible. And you should also consider what criteria and how that is defined is most relevant in your field. Finally, when engaging with sources, you'll also want to consider how you're using it in your research. We will discuss this more in another part of this video, but we do want to consider why we're including a source in our paper and ask some questions about the source's purpose in your research. Are you using this source to trace the context, history, or background of a particular issue, or to show how an issue has changed over time? For example, what can using outdated census data versus up-to-date census data show? Consider your purpose. Are you using this source to show why a theory or methodology has succeeded or failed? To highlight the relevance of your research topic? To identify the current data, trends, themes, etc. regarding a topic? Or to justify the use of a theory or methodology? These are good questions to ask to determine if your source is truly useful in your research. If you have questions about anything we covered in this video, our online study hub is a great place to post questions and get a tutor response. If you would like to continue learning about evaluating source credibility, you can read about another method, the CRAAP test, here. Thank you for joining us to discuss evaluating sources, and we hope to see you in our next segment, Approaching Critical Reading. Thank you.